Hi, my name is Aaron Durham, and I am presenting on the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. This presentation was created by myself and Holly Fougat. Um, Quick overview, the Middle Ages. This was the period of time between the 5th and 16th centuries. It was signified by the collapse of Western Rome, and there were very few medical advancements during this time. The Renaissance, this is generally regarded as the 16th and 17th centuries, and while there was still little medical knowledge, there was a mental shift that allowed for more developments in the health sciences and allowed for the developments to come. Going into the Middle Ages, there's a power vacuum. Rome is gone, Western Rome has collapsed. Settlements and cities are left to rely on themselves. This creates a overcrowding problem. City occupancy got much worse, and this makes already small problems much bigger. Sewage and lack of fresh water gets much worse. Hygiene gets much worse, and this means that lots of people, lots of sewage, bad hygiene. It's makes it a gestation ground for diseases. Diseases run rampant without any cure. Smallpox, leprosy, St. Anthony's fire, diphtheria, measles, influenza, tuberculosis, and anthrax. And that's not even talking about the plague yet. And with this power vacuum, you have the center of Western learning shifts to Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, which has been Christian since the 4th century. This means the Roman Catholic Church effectively dominated what direction the medical world would take throughout the Middle Ages. Priests were sought out for medical expertise. And this, because disease was thought to be a reaction of God to the sins committed, this rules the Middle Ages and really stalls medical advancement. Prayer and religious practices were the height of medical practice. An example of this would have been praying over relics. This would have been one of the highest forms of medical practice during this time. This might have been taking the bodies or body parts of saints and bringing them to the sick or dying and having them touch these relics and pray over them. The most famous example of this would be the head injury of Don Carlos and his miraculous healing, which you may be familiar with because of how well recorded and spoken of this example is. There are some significant things that happen to influence health and where we head from here during this time. Of course, you have the Justinianic plague, which is the earliest well-recorded example of the bubonic plague. Of course, it's believed to have developed before this in Asia, but starting in 541, right after the fall of Rome, you have the Justinianic plague, which continues in waves for a couple of centuries. And this really impacts health in the Middle Ages and the outlook. It's probably the biggest disease they're fighting during this time. You have Galen the physician, who was a renowned physician right before the Middle Ages started, who was notable for his knowledge in infectious disease, pharmacology, anatomy of the muscles and spinal cord. And his teachings really remain the primary authority for the entirety of the Middle Ages. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, but the problem again is that there's no pursuit of knowledge, there's no advancement. They take that and it really stays the pinnacle of knowledge throughout the entirety of the Middle Ages. Black Death is the more notorious wave of bubonic plague, and it greatly impacted the medical world. Europe lost almost a third of its population, and it created a very polarizing effect in the religious world. You had people who fled to piety, and then you had people who fled in the exact opposite direction of piety, amorality, because of the overrule and oversight of the Roman Catholic Church. Then you have the Renaissance. The Renaissance means rebirth, and you have this gradual progression to a more naturalistic and holistic way of thinking. Diseases and plagues were still present with limited medical care, but you have a lot more medicinal herbs. You have water casting comes into practice. You have bloodletting, all these natural remedies, which some is good, most of it's bad. But the big thing that comes with the the Renaissance and that really makes it stand apart from the Middle Ages is the re-romanticizing of knowledge. And one of the biggest things to happen in regards to this is the willingness to dissect and observe the human body. And that made a huge impact on medical progress and medical advancements, especially in anatomy and surgery. You have some of these names you may have heard of that made lasting contributions to this would be Girolamo Fracastoro, who is notable for being the first to suggest that epidemics may come from pathogens outside the body. You can find this in my source explaining plague in early modern Europe. Of course, you have Ambroise Paré and Leonardo da Vinci making leaps forward in anatomy, and Paré specifically in surgery. You have later on in the Renaissance, you have John Hunter also making leaps forward in anatomy. You have the microscope is discovered. John Grant is notable for advancements in the fields of statistics and epidemiology. And then, of course, you have health boards that are established in Italy initially to fight the plague, but it then expands to include a host of other things, and this is a huge leap forward for health education and might even be considered the beginning of health education. There are some concerns that remain as the Renaissance comes to a close: how to deal with human waste, and basic hygiene still has not been solved and needs to be. It's dirty people who aren't bathing, wearing dirty clothes that can't be washed because of the materials, and so this is a problem that still has to be solved. In conclusion, epidemics and pandemics ruled the Middle Ages, and religion was sought as the answer for why disease occurred and how to prevent it. But as the Renaissance comes around, you have a new way of thinking with new sources of treatment. There are still health concerns that need to be confronted, but there are advancements in anatomy, surgery. You learn of smaller organisms because of the microscope. Epidemiology and health boards are established. So there is some positives there. Here are references. I had a great time making this presentation, working with Holly on it, and I can't wait to see the rest of your presentation.